Again, welcome and thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are very pleased at the Camden Public Library to welcome our friend Roger Moody, who can often be seen, well, during better times when we could actually go into the library more often. We can often find Roger at the library, frequently talking to our friend Ken Gross up in the Walsh History Center, doing research. Let me tell you a little bit about Roger. He's here tonight to talk to us about his new book, which is called A Watercraft Form and Function, and it is about a biography of naval architect Geerd Hendel. So, Roger Moody has long time had an interest in Maine history and especially its maritime legacy. His background includes an undergraduate education at the University of Maine and a graduate degree in public administration from Syracuse University. His public service career counts many years of municipal and school management and serving for 8 years as Knox County Commissioner. So, without further ado, I'd love to welcome Roger. Thank you so much, Roger.
I should say that my research for this book began when I was, writing the previous book that I wrote called Logging Towboats and Boom Jumpers, because Geerd Hendel designed some of the vessels used on the West Branch of Penobscot that I wrote about. So that was a nice connection, and I wanted to know more about him. Plus, when I joined Camden Rotary in 1995, he was one of the most elderly members there. And so I knew him about 3 years before he passed away. He was a quiet man and didn't know him well, but I still carry an image of him in my mind. And there's a picture of him. Hard to tell what age he was there, but I would guess 40-ish. I should say, too, that the title of the book, of Watercraft Form and Function, really, the form and function concepts rise in architecture more than boat building. And the classic debate is among architects, does function follow form or form follow function? And as I thought about Geerd's boats, the form was just so elegant and beautiful, pleasing to the eye for almost any kind of boat that he designed. But at the same time, their functionality was incredible. And I think that's proved whether he built logging towboats or draggers or one designs or the other categories that we were blessed by his designs for. Anyway, I just wanted to throw into the slide the current architectural consensus concludes that form follows human needs, function follows human needs, and form follows human behavior, which I think makes sense. And then I found this quote by an author, Peter Neal, who says, "The best boats are statements of sublime utility." And that says it better than I can, that form and function need to be blended to get truly beautiful and functional vessels. So this is a quote from a book written by Dan McNaughton, who lives up in Belmont, not far from here. So I'll let you read that for a second, but very complimentary about Geerd's harmony of lines and hull form, shear, and deck houses. And new boats would look best on water, and that's what he did. Hendel was born in Germany in 1903. He studied naval architecture at a state college there, graduated in 1925. He wanted to explore the United States. He was one of, I think, 8 children, and I don't know what the other siblings did, but he was clearly intending to explore a bit of the world and found work right away in the office of Theodore Wells in New York City, but it only lasted for 7 months because work that Wells had anticipated just didn't arrive. In the meanwhile, though, Hendel was hired as a draftsman by Bath Iron Works in 1929. And BIW in the late 20s, late part of the roaring 20s, was building a yacht a month, as I say in the text here, large yachts, 205 feet to 250 feet. And BIW's drafting team was really large, composed of 20 individuals. Hendel, of course, had only small parts, design parts, roles to fill in some of these vessels. But here's Lonia on the left and Heismaro on the right. I think they're typical of those luxurious yachts of the day, and he had small parts in them. One of the great fortunes, I guess, in his life was to work for Starling Burgess. Not that I think Starling Burgess was an easy man to work for. He was just brilliant at whatever he designed or worked at, whether it was, well, and I've, right here in the middle, I've put a little note about Llewellyn Howland's biography of Burgess. No ordinary being, inventor, naval architect, aviation pioneer, and master of American design. It's a wonderful book, and Hendel, to hold his own intellectually and design-wise with this brilliant man must have been a thing to behold. He lasted 5 years and in that relationship, and Burgess actually wanted Hendel to move with him to New York City, but Hendel really liked Maine after Burgess had decided he was going to move back to New York, and said no thank you. So their first collaboration, if I can call that, was designing the Toby yacht Ranger, which thrashed the British Challenger Endeavour II in 1937. And so a bit of what I recounted about those 5 years with Burgess is shown there. One of the boats that I found interesting that Hendel worked on in a design sense, draftsmanship sense, with Burgess was this vessel called Tinevette. She was a working model of 33.5 feet for a 100-foot high-speed patrol boat for the Coast Guard. Burgess had developed what we think is a common hull design today, the V-form, which was suitable for high-speed operations and had great turning capabilities. You can see the stats. And that was a very fast boat for the day. Tinevette went about 38 knots, and Burgess was so taken with her that he'd jump aboard her early in the morning when it was calm and was casted and run her out to around Mohegan and back again. It was quite the vessel. And the second paragraph at the bottom of the page talks about a couple of aluminum vessels that Burgess was thinking could be appropriate for Coast Guard and Navy use. One was a 250-foot all-aluminum turbo-powered light destroyer, V-hull design, and a 250-foot boat that would go almost 60 miles an hour. Seems just incredible. But then Hendel's employment curve took a dive because of the stock market crash of 1930s. He was fortunate, and I'll talk about this a little later, that BIW came roaring back, building a whole series, dozens and dozens of draggers and trawlers. So Hendel, for a bit of time, moved on to Bethlehem Shipbuilding in Quincy, which had design work for him building designing an 87-foot fireboat for Portland. But a guy in Booth Bay, East Booth Bay, Henry Rice, actually got the bid, and he knew Hendel by that point and asked him to move back and help with that construction project. Then rehired again in 32 at BIW and became the chief draftsman at 35. Hendel started to blend his career a little bit in the 30s by working independently. He designed, I think initially, the main Camp 1 design, which was 16 feet LOA, and then moved to Booth Bay Harbor in 34. And that, of course, connected him with the Booth Bay Harbor Yacht Club and their racing sloop summer programs. They had such a variety of boats, though, that it frustrated everyone. They tried to deal with it with handicaps, but there's no commonality. And Hendel kept before the board of the yacht club the idea of a one design class for Boothbay Harbor. And on the left here is Sanderling, the 20-foot, what they call Boothbay 20. And then the 1939-21 Loon, both Hendel designs that were part of his experiments to gain faster boats that would fit the water conditions and wind conditions in Boothbay. So here's the Boothbay Harbor, Boothbay 21, the racing class that dominates the racing in the summer down there. A much beloved boat for a lot of reasons in terms of being fun to sail, very dry boat. Rumors have it that none has ever capsized. Whether that's true or not, I couldn't say, but the rumors exist. And about 50 of those boats still designed today, or raced today, I should say, some designed in fiberglass, and some of the originals have been restored and maintained and participate as well. So Hendel's work with aluminum led him to design and build Whistler, 26-foot sloop. Alcoa was trying to prove at the time that it had aluminum alloys suitable for constructing boats for saltwater use. After the First World War and as the second was building up, there was a lot of aluminum around, but aircraft aluminum is entirely different from maritime aluminum, and the aluminum from aircraft just dissolved in salt water. So this was a magnesium alloy, and Hendel developed this boat around that material. Here she is being ready for painting. She was riveted because aluminum welding technology was just in its infancy in those days. And on the right, you can see Whistler under sail. She was well publicized by Alcoa. Here's an ad from Rudder magazine that, motorboat actually in this case, that just exploits the qualities of aluminum as a boat welding material. And here's Whistler now. I own her. I found she was for sale in a field up in Monroe. Had been sitting there uncovered for 15 years and was looking pretty derelict. So I made a deal with the young man who owned her. Well, he'd fallen in love, started a family, and Whistler was past history for him when that relationship started. She has been bead blasted. It's a light touch paint removal technique as opposed to sandblasting, and ready now to be repainted with the olive rib at Belmont Boatworks. I don't really intend to sail her, I don't think. Given her history, I think she's more appropriate for a museum placement. Handsome vessel to my mind, represents, the very first in aluminum for salt water. And I've crawled around in her bilges, taking off the deck hardware in preparation for painting. And you'd swear that boat was brand new to be in the bilges. Here's a lightship that Hendel worked on at Rice Brothers in East Boothbay. She was stationed off Long Sand Shoal in Connecticut. And then Hendel moved to Camden, 1941. Of course, the Camden Shipbuilding was building wooden vessels for World War II, including these rescue tugs. Here, several rescue tugs, and the pine tree barges shown here on the right. And he was in charge of the hull building department, although a lot of that, I think, was buying wood, because the pace at which these vessels were built consumed enormous quantities of oak, cedar, and the like. Here's, I'm going to venture into the yachts that he designed. Here's Porpoise. And this is a review, a quote from Joel White, whom a lot of you may know was a founder, I think, of Wooden Boat magazine and a widely respected authority on boat design. And I've highlighted in gray some of his comments about the long continuous flow of the shear line, starting from a low freeboard near the stern, rising to, he calls it a flare and clipper bow. This one's more modified than others. And then Hendel also, mid-shear where the superstructure of the vessel meets the hull, often used a technique to lower the profile, the height of the superstructure. In this case, it was a weather cloth laced between handrail and camp rail. And she earned a place on the cover of Rudder magazine in 1952. And here's, I think, the second largest yacht that Hendel designed, Wiedersehen, built in 53 to 55 at Abeking and Rasmussen Yard in Germany, which builds a lot of boats and still is in business these days. But you can see this vessel, you know, as porpoise, low freeboard in the stern, clipper bow, wonderful relationship in terms of visual height between the superstructure and the hull, and then this graceful sweep of the shear line. Also, you'll see in a lot of Hendel's boats that we looked at, he always had a radius edge to the front and in the rear windows in a series. You can see that a little more here and on this side as well. So if you can pick that out at times, just an identifying detail. Here's the largest boat that he built, the Claybeth Mora, for many more years known as George, 124 feet, with his design elements throughout. And then enough on yachts, I guess, for the time we have available. Draggers, he moved into, as I mentioned, he learned a lot about them at BIW in the early 30s. And I find his family still has some of his etchings. And this is a workboat in the Baltic Sea off Hamburg, Germany, and at the mouth of the Elbe River. And, you know, here's a man who came from building yachts of 250 feet or designing them, experiencing them at Bath. And yet his heart was always in some of these workboats. And the fact that he kept those etchings just, I think, bears that out wonderfully. Here's a small dragger, Camden, built in 44. Here's the Clipperfish, built at the Harvey Gamage Yard down in Bristol. This is Pocahontas. Jay Hanna, some of you probably know about, a model yacht and boat builder who's now passed, but lived in Rockport. This is one of his models. It's at the Maine Maritime Museum. And another of Hendel's draggers is in the Smithsonian Maritime History Collection. This is Albatross. But they're just fantastic, beautiful, functional vessels that represent the kind of work they did in the best way. We move on to some examples of sailing vessels. Here's Elfard, 1948, for Judge Curtis Bach. Originally rigged with aluminum mast as a sloop, but for cross-Atlantic sailing, they changed the rig to that of a ketch. And sure enough, they were dismasted. That is, Judge Bach and the crew on their way to Spain, but were safe after a period of worry for those folks here in Camden. Some others of his designs include a 40-foot center cockpit catch on the left. Freya, I think probably 3 of those were built, a semi-production boat. The center is the raised deck cutter Lady Joan, built by Morse Boat Building in Thomaston. And on the right is Godolphin, certainly French ship Sloop influenced, built in 46. Gone away. I put this slide in just to show, here's yet another classic hull design. These boats are out there, for the many decades, and people keep coming back to them because they're so beautiful and functional. Here's Weegan, 26 feet, now known as Jackie B. She's, as I say, a sister vessel to Whistler, although she was built in wood. And lobster boats. He designed a number of them. Here's the Bet Selma, really one of our homegrown, best-known boats. I guess she's in tough shape now at Artisan Boat Works, but hopefully she'll be restored. No official word on that yet. A smaller 27-foot design that several were built of, and here's Fallow Rope combination lobster pilot boat. This was built by Jerry Libby's Melvin Heights boat shop up on Melvin Heights. And here's one of Hendel's boats built at Rockland Boat by Axel Gronros and his son. This was a charter fisherman sailing out of New Jersey. But her owner says here it's the prettiest boat he ever owned. And here's a boat that was built at James Rockefeller's Ball Mountain Boat Works up off Howe Hill here in Camden. And I looked at that at first and said, oh, just a minute, proportions are wrong between the hull and the superstructure here. But Jim Rockefeller told me that the owner of this boat was about 6'5", and Hendel had to create additional height in the cabin to make it work for him. And in the book, I've created a separate chapter on Camden shipbuilding, just because although Hendel established his own independent naval architecture firm in 1945 on Bayview Street, I should say, that was in the building area that was occupied by Admiral's Buttons until just recently. So Hendel was there for several decades. This shows some 18-foot aluminum production boats. Because of his familiarity with aluminum, he tried to get, I think, Camden Shipbuilding to do more with that material, but it never really took hold with them. And this was a production boat that had 3 configurations possible. A number of them were sold. Here's a carry box Northern Cross, awfully flat sheer on that one, but still a handsome vessel, I think. And this is Fantasy, built in 1949. Anahita 4, beautiful yacht. This is a painting of her that's owned by Barbara Dyer. And Sport Fishermen, too, were a boat that Hendel designed. Here's Wild Goose. There were others as well. And of course, Porpoise is Sport Fisherman as well. And he also designed these, I think they were called houseboats in the day, but they're liveaboards, maybe tugs, what you might want to call them. Sooner in 54. And here's Admiral Blake, just a bit longer, built for the New York television radio executive, John Blake. Another one of his, yachts that's had a long, long career. This is a pearl necklace. was a gift from its owner to his wife, and she had said she wanted a string of pearls for her birthday, so he got her a pearl necklace. She's been renamed, adapted over the years. You can see the flying bridge here is enclosed, but this is, I think, a recent picture of her in Florida, and has Hendel's classic design elements that just are almost ageless. And this is Ulster, his own boat. Some of you who live in Camden may have seen her in the harbor. She had a mooring right off the yacht club. Initially, Flybridge was open, but he enclosed the cabin later on. So she looked like this with a light blue hull. Sabrina, this was a class of boat he designed, a production boat, 33 feet, and called Sportster. His own boat, Ulster, was of that hull design. I think this is a particularly handsome boat. And this is also the same hull, but designed first for pleasure boating, and then she was rigged as a commercial trawler in Connecticut, and never used as a trawler, though. Actually, I think she should be called a dragger. The only distinction I've found is draggers are less than 100 feet and trawlers are more than 100. Some of you may have more information on that. That's what I know. Here's Owe, later Brazil. She's still alive and well and available for charter in Providence. And windlass, another handsome vessel. And of course, Hendel got involved in designing tugs and towboats, as we talked about earlier. These two were for Central Main Power, big tow and middle tow. There was no little tow. There was a boat called Papoose, I guess, instead. But this is a remarkable flat hull to go in close to the shoreline to take pulpwood logs that had come to shore and gather them into booms. Nibrock, built for the Brown Paper Company in New Hampshire. And here's a Sea Smoke, kind of a tug that was working, built for a lobster pound in Friendship, but she was bought by a couple in Portsmouth Harbor, and they wanted a copy of my book, and I met them, delightful couple, just probably a month ago here. And they ran it as Tug Alley 2, a tour boat in Portsmouth for, I don't know, 10 to 15 years anyway. And here's the Owe Harkness, and her twin was William Hilton, both built for the Great Northern Hope towing work on the West Branch of Penobscot, taking logs to the mills in Millinocket. And this is what the tow looked like with a log boom. This one happens to be one of the larger ones I've ever seen, right about 21 acres. And here's the typical steel boom jumper. Hendel designed, I don't know, 6 or 8 of those for various lumber companies. This is a tug, Elton A2, owned by Proc Marine. I think she's still in the water, still working. And of course, the Welcome, which is Camden Harbor Master's boat. One of the mysteries in Hendel's life was what boats did he really influence the designs of? Because he was, as I said earlier, a modest man, didn't seek publicity. And in one interview at Mystic Seaport, his interviewers said, well, tell us about the Yankee 1 design. Didn't you really design that boat? Because it had so many elements in her hull that would have been Hendel's, knowledge to create. But Hendel was working for Burgess at that time, and he said, no, that was Burgess's idea. I just translated his ideas into plans. But So Hendel, in the background of this local guy in Camden, Elmer Colomer, who was known as Camden's one-man boatyard or shipyard. Elmer could build the most beautiful hulls, but he needed help when it came to some lofting and interior design and the layout of interiors. So I think Hendel helped him very, very quietly, but with great support. This is Old Baldy looked like Sazerac, which is this boat here, which looked like Pemaquid. And Hendel also had to take Chappelle's design and translate it from 1914 work to what builders would more typically look for in terms of explanation in 1965. Here's Andiamo, another Colomer and Hendel combination. Felicity, again built by Colomer. Here's Heritage, which most of you see and who live locally in Camden Harbor. She operates as a day sailor, but beautiful vessel. So, need to say it, I guess, one more time. Hendel was known locally as being modest and humble, but honest and ethical. And he had a great talent for storytelling too, I'm told. Gordon Bach, you know, the son of Vice President Shipbuilding Cary Bach, said Hendel was friendly and well-liked, and he spent many Christmases at the Bach home. Hendel didn't get married until he was 68 years old, and he married Honey Brown, and he died at age 98. So I think they had a marriage of more than 30 years even then. But Hendel was known to have 3 constant companions, aside from a spouse, perhaps: sketch paper, a pencil or pen and ink, and a briar pipe. And then I was tickled by the story that Hendel was just full of common sense and practical solutions when a winch in 1954 failed and shipbuilding was trying to haul a vessel up the railway. Hendel took the rear wheel off the yard's work truck, replaced it with a rim, and then connected a long leather belt from the machine shop to connect the rim to the winch, and put the truck in reverse and pull the vessel up the railway. The crew, I think, in fun said, well, she must have traveled 75 miles in reverse to complete the hauling out process. In that interview where we talked about Yankee One designs, Hendel named 3 vessels as his favorite when asked the question: the dragger Pocahontas, the sport fisherman Porpoise, and Wiedersehen, which is interesting. Note those are his favorites because certainly vessels that really appeal to us. But the Boothbay Harbor One design is probably the most successful boat that he built in terms of utility, in terms of the function it was to perform, and the fun it is to sail. It's lasted and lasted, and we hope it will be thus for decades to come. And I always was kind of amazed too by the repeat orders that he had for his workboats. He went back, and built 5 workboats at the Harvey Gamage Yard, and then the repeat orders for logging towboats. Just says he understood his clients' needs, delivered in the best way, and they kept coming back to him. I should note too that his entire archives relating to more than the 280 designs he completed is at the Maine Maritime Museum. And that was the source of a lot of my research, although I went to Mystic, the Penobscot Marine Museum, interviews, and a whole lot of stuff online that just is amazing to find. And I would say by conclusion that I was struck by this in his resume. He said, and this was when he was well into his 80s, I found my work rewarding, not a burden, met interesting people, and also made friends doing it. Really, to me, what more could one ask from a chosen career? So the book is much, much longer than I've been able to have time to describe, but I'd be happy to entertain questions and see what you're thinking about out there.
Thank you so much, Roger. I am completely floored by how prolific his career was and by just the incredible diversity of the designs that were produced.
Yes.
Such an informative talk. Thank you. We have already had a couple comments coming into the chat box, and at this time I'd like to invite others to please, if you have any questions for Roger, or if you'd like to share a memory of Hendel that you might have, or if you'd like to discuss, perhaps you own one of his vessels, please go ahead and put it in the chat box and I'll read it aloud. So the first comment that came in is from Paul, and it says, "Hi Roger, not a question, but a small world department. I was boat boy on the Godolphin from 1965 to 1967. And then he put Albert and Marion Chatfield. Very cool.
Yeah.
And then we have another comment that came in. It says, "Hi, Roger, another small world. I believe that we have the half-yard model of Gone Away over the mantelpiece."
Oh, yeah. For those things that callers and viewers have that I might have their permission to use in the future, I'm always pleased to receive some of those pieces of his work that I wasn't able to otherwise access. So my email address is there on the screen. Anybody who wants to send that stuff is most welcome to do that. I appreciate having it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, as I mentioned to Roger in a conversation we had before we opened up the program, I do know that we have a lot of people from Booth Bay attending to our program this evening tonight. So that's magnificent. And I'm sure that they've witnessed a lot of the One Design boat races, which is very cool. So let's see. Go ahead. If you have a question, go ahead and you can type it into the chat group. Roger, you had mentioned that you are looking to exhibit the Whistler. Can you tell me what museum? I mean, have you been entertaining any discussions with different museums about where that might be exhibited when it's complete?
Yeah, well, I've had some informal conversations, but she was in such poor shape visually, externally, that it was very hard to convince anybody to take much more than a brief look. But with fresh paint, I'm convinced she'll look almost new, and therefore suitable to display. I'm, of course, with her archival materials being at the Maine Maritime Museum, I think that would be a really appropriate placement. But Penobscot Marine Museum as well, and Mystic, possibly, although, you know, that's one of the problems with aluminum boats. People love wooden boats, and in spite of what some of us will gauge as extremely poor conditions and impossible expense to rehab them, people do that. And I respect that. I'm feeling just a little depressed at times about the lack of respect that aluminum might get. I mean, I admit it's not a lovable material, but certain selected boats, perhaps such as Whistler, have a pedigree and a point in history that makes them worthy.
Absolutely. Yes. No, I look forward to seeing the finished product for sure. We have someone, Valerie says, "Thank you. Very interesting." And she was attending from Los Angeles. So thank you for joining us.
Wonderful.
From way out in California. We have another comment that came in. It says, "I understand that Hendel came to Bath Ironworks specifically due to his advanced understanding of design in aluminum. Specifically, he was responsible for the mast design on Ranger. Were you able to find anything like that in studying the Ranger?"
Yes, I mean, the records are clear that he did have a major role in designing the mast. In my book, I have a cross-section of the mast as an illustration. But as far as aluminum, that he might have learned about earlier on. It's possible that when he was doing his work experience as a part of his degree work at the German yard of Ebbing and Rasmussen, they did a lot of workboats and were starting to get into military naval craft. And he may have known something of it then, but and I really, at least in my research, have found the connection between Starling Burgess and Hendel was really the genesis of Hendel's interest in aluminum. If you remember Starling Burgess, I have to go back to the sequence of history, but Burgess designed what was called a Dymaxion car. It was shaped like an airplane fuselage without wings, 3 wheels, and I think there are only like 2 or 3 of them built, but it was, if you look at the technology in that and the design concepts in that, that car could sit on the road these days and hold its own in some ways. But one of them had an accident, and that destroyed public confidence altogether. But that's a connection I make, or have made at least thus far in the research I've done, is that Burgess was an early user of aluminum, especially for aircraft. And then that ran over into watercraft.
Thank you. We have a comment that came in from Keith. It says, the pictures seem to show that the Whistler has no keel now. Is the plan to complete her?
Yeah, she has no keel. Yes, that's true. The keel was a hard pine keel. And so the young man who bought her, well, he was a young man from Monroe who bought her from a yard in Winterport on the Penobscot River, because that yard had stored the boat for some years with non-payment of fees. It just auctioned it off. So I don't think the keel was in good shape then, and this young man removed it to try to repair it, and then it just lay flat on that field in Monroe, and now it's still there, but it's all rotted. So it would take, and the plans exist, of course, for Whistler, take a hard pine keel fitted to that. Original garboard was aluminum, could be done in perhaps wood to match the keel construction. But I haven't gone that far yet, except in casual thinking.
Thank you. A comment came in from John. It says, great presentation, makes me want a boat, but ... Boats are a lot of work for sure.
Yes.
Meg asked a question. She said, did Starling Burgess have anything to do with the design of the Boothbay Harbor 1 design?
Well, not directly. He and Hendel were competing against each other before the Boothbay Harbor Yacht Club to have their design selected. And so that was a case where Hendel's design won out over Burgess's. There's some of Mystic in Starling Burgess's archives, which are there. There's some letters from Burgess saying, oh, my boat's much better, it's much faster. Hendel's having problems with his, and so on. But that's not the way the committee saw it when they made the decision to choose Hendel's design.
We have another comment about the Boothbay 1 design. It says, it is fun to see Loon, the Boothbay Harbor 1 design that Hendel made in the fall of 1937, has been restored and sails today in the harbor. Also, the boat number 1, Fraulein, has been recently sold, and we look forward to seeing her sail next summer.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we have a comment that says, fun to learn more about Hendel, and thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so this is a good moment for, if anyone has any last questions, to go ahead and quickly type them in. And while we wait to see, Roger, are you working on any new books? Are you doing any new research these days? What's next?
Oh, I love the research and the exploration and about boats. Well, if I could find the right topic, yeah, that would be of interest to me. I've explored a guy named William Wallace Bates, who was born in Nova Scotia, but his family moved to Robinson, Maine, just below Calais. And that was in the 1840s. He went out to the Great Lakes and took the designs of the centerboard working schooners in the Bay of Fundy and just revolutionized uh, boat design in the Midwest on the Great Lakes. And so it's a very interesting story. He had many accomplishments in his life. Wound up being the U.S. Commissioner of Navigation. But I'm not sure there's not enough there for a book, and so I'm not sure what to do with that. I write for Maine Boats, Homes, and Harbors magazine.
Okay.
And I've got, I think maybe 4 articles in various stages of completion, but I'll hope to submit those, probably one in the next month or 2, and then a few more over the next year.
Oh, super.
The short articles really keep me going for the time being.
I imagine. Yes. Well, we'll keep our eyes peeled for those. We have a couple more comments and questions that came in. One is from Meg. It says, I remember seeing a picture of the first test sail of the BBH-1 design, which took place in November in BBH. Brr. Yes. Sailing in November, unless it's a beautiful day like today.
That's right.
Can be chilly. Another comment, a question, wasn't Ranger a J boat rather than a 12 meter?
Possibly. 12 meters is what I've seen in my research, but I'm not that familiar with the design to be able to really tell much more.
Sure, okay. Starling Burgess sailed in Fraulein boat #1 for many years as a friend and sailing competitor of Hendel.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Another comment, nice to know about Burgess, who also designed the Times font. Oh, I didn't know that. Did you know that?
What was that again?
It says, nice to know about Burgess, who also designed the Times font. So the typing font, Times.
Oh, yes. Oh, did he? Times New Roman?
Yeah, I guess so.
Wow. Yeah. Well, he was a poet as well.
Really?
And yeah, as well as being a brilliant engineer and designer aesthetically. I haven't ever read any of his poetry, but I think that's what fed his soul from what I read, that it made him think and feel deeply.
Oh, definitely Renaissance folks.
Mm-hmm.
Tim says, thank you. Please invite me to these future events. You all are invited. If you are not a Camden resident, you are so welcome to always come to our programs. And you can find out about all of them on our calendar on the Camden Public Library's website, librarycamden.org. Sandy says, Roger, thanks for tonight's presentation and writing the book. Would you be interested in joining us at BHYC, Booth Bay Harbor Yacht Club, hopefully in healthy times, to discuss the book?
I would be pleased to do that.
All right.
A lot of my research, well, not a lot, but a substantial amount of research was at the Booth Bay Region Historical Society with Barbara Rumsey. And she and I have steady correspondence and share things that we know are of common interest. So yeah, I got some great folks in Booth Bay and East Booth Bay, and it'd be great to connect with them and the book.
All right, Sandy. So it sounds like you should email Roger. I think his email is right up there on the on the screen.
Yes.
And if you have any trouble reaching him, just email me and I'll get you guys connected.
Yes.
We have another compliment. Thank you so much for organizing this. Oh, a comment. Yes, Ranger was a J boat. It was the last one to win the cup.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go. All right. Well, with that, Roger, thank you so much. This was so informative, and I learned so much. Thank you very much. I know that the folks attending really enjoyed this too.
Well, you're more than welcome. It's always fun to share what you know, and Geerd Hendel was overlooked, I think, for a long time in terms of his design work and accomplishments, and I'm pleased to bring that to the light of day.
Well, we're very grateful that you did, for sure. And we do have the book at the Camden Public Library, and I encourage you all to also see if you can get a copy. All the information's right up there on your screen. And if for some reason you don't have a pen, again, just email me, and I'm happy to send you all this information as well. So with that, I remind you that we've recorded this, and you'll be able to find it afterwards, probably by tomorrow morning, on the Camden Public Library Program's YouTube channel. And so you can feel free to share it with your friends. And with that, Roger, I thank you again, and I wish you a wonderful good evening to everyone.
Thanks to all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.